What's up, YouTubers? So before we get started with this video, on first take, they're going to be talking about the game last night between the Kansas City Chiefs and Houston Texans. So let's see what they have to say about that.
Last night's outcome, was it more about the Chiefs or was it more about the Texans?
Well, to me, it was more about the Texans. I mean, we all knew that the Chiefs were going to win this game. I'm sure all three of us, myself, Max, and Ryan, picked the Chiefs to win this game. But
Yup.
we also lamented the fact that DeShaun Watson didn't have DeAndre Hopkins any longer. Now, Will Fuller still had about 8 receptions for 112 yards, and we understand from a statistical perspective he showed up. But what I would remind everybody is that the score was 7-7, and then the Kansas City Chiefs proceeded to score 24 straight unanswered points, or 24 unanswered points, and as a result, the game was considerably out of reach. You take that spurt into account, and then you take into account what happened in the AFC divisional playoff game when Houston was up 24-0 before the Kansas City Chiefs scored like 41 unanswered points and ultimately ended up winning 51-31. Take that into account, ladies and gentlemen, and from the time that the Kansas City Chiefs were down 24-0 to the Houston Texans, they have outscored the Houston Texans 82-14. Think about that for a second. 82-14.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. The defense should be embarrassed.
The last, basically a part of the last two games that they've played against one another. For you to know, if you're Bill O'Brien, that you're in the same conference as the Kansas City Chiefs, for you to know that you're going up against a juggernaut led by Patrick Mahomes, with Tyreek Hill, with Sammy Watkins, with Travis Kelce, and then, this guy, Clyde Edwards, out of LSU, this brother's running for 138 yards, averaging more than 5 yards a carry, showing up as a rookie to do his thing. My goodness, Damian Williams decided to opt out of play because of COVID-19. I don't know if he'll have a job when he gets back if this kid continues to play the way that he looked last night. I'm just thinking about all of those things, and as great as the Kansas City Chiefs are, particularly offensively, when I think about that number, 82-14, it just makes me look at this former offensive coordinator, this former collegiate head coach, this present head coach that also serves as the GM of the Houston Texans, named Bill O'Brien, and I'm like, my God, what did you do by letting go of DeAndre Hopkins? Not that it would have made much of a...
Yeah, that was a big mistake. I mean, that's a huge, should be fireable mistake in getting rid of DeAndre Hopkins.
difference, but you just never know. And I see DeShaun Watson in that post-game conference looking relatively helpless, talking about he did all he could, but in the end, it just said to me what we knew coming into the game. Houston Texans ain't good enough. They might make a run for the AFC South, but we don't expect them to make any noise, even with a great young quarterback like DeShaun Watson, because we don't like the pieces and the parts around him. Plain and simple.
So I felt that the Kansas City Chiefs were going to beat the Houston Texans to begin with, but definitely the Kansas City Chiefs just beat up on the Houston Texans. I was more worried about the Houston Texans defense and what they were going to be able to do, and they just got stomped on. So let's take a quick look at the Kansas City Chiefs stats real quick last night. So Patrick Mahomes went 24 for 32 for 211 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 1 sack for 8 yards, and his QBR ranked out at 90. Let's see, Clyde Edwards, he was pretty much the star of last night. Clyde Edwards-Heliare, he ran the rock 25 times for 138 yards, 1 touchdown and 5.6 yards a carry, and he's only a rookie. So that man balled out of control for his first game in the NFL. After that, Watkins caught the rock 7 times for 82 yards, 1 touchdown. Travis Kelce caught the rock 6 times for 50 yards for 1 touchdown, 8.3 average a catch. And Tyreek Hill caught the rock 5 times for 46 yards, 1 touchdown, and 9.2 yards an average a catch. So needless to say, the Kansas City Chiefs were just all over the place. So let's take a real quick look at the Houston Texans. DeShaun Watson went 20 for 32, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, sacked 4 times for 11 yards, and his QBR finished up at 52.6. David Johnson caught the rock, or ran the rock 11 times for 77 yards and 1 touchdown. And William Fuller had the best night. He caught the rock 8 times for 112 yards for 14 yards in average. So DeAndre Hopkins is missing. They do hurt without him, but William Fuller kind of did what he could do to kind of fill that void, even though you can't really fill a void about DeAndre Hopkins. So let's continue.
Yeah, the Texans defense has issues, and not having DeAndre Hopkins does not help the offense, obviously. But last night was about the Kansas City Chiefs. The triplets. What people maybe forget is that Kansas City had quadruplets, maybe the best quadruplets of all time. Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill at the wideout position, Travis Kelce obviously at tight end, and Kareem Hunt at running back, right? Like those.
Well, I don't know if that's the best duo ever. I would say what comes to mind quickly is probably Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, and Michael Irving. There's a couple other. I'd say maybe Kurt Warner, Isaac Bruce, and Marshall Faulk. Maybe there's a couple other ones, but let's continue.
Those four guys, when has there ever been a collection like that at those four skills positions offensively? Has there ever? Maybe they're on a very short list at best. Now, Kareem Hunt had his problems and is no longer on the team. And Damian Williams stepped up and actually had some clutch play for this team throughout his tenure there. If it may be, he opted out this season, and by the way, it may be over because of Clyde Edwards-Heliare. Clyde Edwards-Heliare gives them back their quadruplets. Maybe, again, the best collection ever. Guys, his thing is how versatile he is. Not just how explosive he is on the ground, but he can catch passes. He didn't even have to throw to him. Like, how many times is he going to be targeted with all the targets, all the weapons that Patrick Mahomes has? But by the way, he can also do that. Think about the weaponry at Mahomes' disposal, at Andy Reid's disposal right now.
Yeah, so I know Patrick Mahomes does have a lot of weapons, but as far as Clyde Edwards-Heliare, I'd like to hold off on hype train for that guy. He had an excellent game for his first game as a rookie, going 25 for 138 yards and 1 touchdown. But I like to see him over time, because this could be one game, he's hyped up. The Houston Texans defense is just playing like trash because there's been no preseason games. There's nothing to warm up to and get all the kinks out of your defense. I like to see maybe Clyde Edwards-Heliare and, week 5, week 6, week 7. If he's still having this type of production, then I can start saying he's an integral part of, the duo that they have there. But I think it's just a little bit too early because he did good, but I like to see some consistency before I really start throwing Clyde out there like that. So let's continue.
They have the much improved defense. Their defense was a little bit underrated a couple of years ago. It wasn't very good, but a little bit underrated a couple of years ago. They should have won the Super Bowl that year, if not for a pre-snap penalty that gave the Patriots the ball back. They'd have been in the Super Bowl, and I think the Chiefs would have beaten the Rams 2 years.
Okay, man. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. All right. Woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Years ago, and then they won the Super Bowl last year, and the way it looks to me, they just got better and more unstoppable on offense. The story of the game is that, look, lots of stuff can go wrong. Barring catastrophic injury, which is always possible in the NFL, knock wood, that doesn't happen. We're looking at a dynasty here. We're looking at a team that for the foreseeable future will be favored every year they play.
So I can definitely agree with the Kansas City Chiefs being favored every year they play. But let's not act like there aren't some other teams out there that can't give the Kansas City Chiefs a run for their money, because they're definitely out there. So let's continue.
Listen, this was about the Texans, and everything that you said, Max, was absolutely true. But other than people who didn't see Clyde Edwards-Heliare play running back at LSU last year, that's the only people who didn't know how good that kid was. That was the new thing about the Kansas City Chiefs. But we expected the Kansas City Chiefs to be a notch above the rest coming into the 2020 season. Who we didn't know about was the Houston Texans. We didn't know what the wide receiving core would look like without DeAndre Hopkins, as Bill O'Brien gave us all the reasons why he had to make that move. We didn't know what they would look like defensively with the new defensive coordinator. Well, this is the first time we got to get those answers. That was the team.
Yeah, and our defense should be absolutely embarrassed to let Clyde Edwards-Heliare run the rock 25 times for 138 yards. I mean, there's no excuse for that. I almost feel like the Houston Texans would have benefited from at least 1 or 2 preseason games to get the kinks out and to maybe adjust to the speed or, to the tempo of how fast a team like the Kansas City Chiefs can come at you. And to have Clyde Edwards-Heliare do all that, that's embarrassing for that defense.
We needed to look at and see, okay, who will you be for the 2020 season? And what I saw, that ain't good. What I saw doesn't bode well for Bill O'Brien, who's the GM and the head coach. It doesn't bode well for Tim Kelly, who's the offensive coordinator, who can't find ways to push the ball down the field with 3 sub-4-4 wide receivers. You have Fuller, you have Stills, you have Cooks. These guys get deep. The problem is finding ways to get intermediate routes, finding ways to get separations on short routes. But you decided to go small ball against the Kansas City Chiefs? No, it's like being the Houston Texans. You go small ball and it works for a little while until you play AD, until you play LeBron. Well, that's
Houston
who you were playing
Rockets
last night. You were playing. Yeah, I'm sorry, the Houston Rockets. Yeah, and so now when you play a team that can put points on the board, a team that can do what you can't play small ball. So their inability to push the ball down the field, the Houston Texans' inability to make huge plays, that loomed large last year.